Good morning, Breakfast with Bacon fans. I am back with a guest who I know you all watched part one and it was extremely well received, Mr. James Grien, who I was just telling is a rock star to me and to those of us in the Catholic world, to those of us who are familiar with abuse, to those of us who have seen the world that we are in today and see some people still rise up. One of the phrases I like to use is from the movie called Antoine Fisher. James, I don't know if you ever saw that movie. Did you? You got to watch the movie. Antoine Fisher was a true story written by a guy called Antoine Fisher, and he eventually got out and became a movie maker, and he wrote the story of his life. But Antoine Fisher was in the foster care system. He was sexually abused. He was physically abused. And at the end of the movie, he did what James Grien, my guest today, talked about at the end of our first show, which is about forgiveness. And Antoine Fisher went to the door of his victimizers 20 years later, and he knocked on the door and they tried to perpetuate the same lie, and he looked at him and said, no, this time I have the power, this time I talk. And he said, I'm still standing. You couldn't get me down. You couldn't get me down. And so today's show, Mr. James Grien has agreed to come back. Yay. Go Jesus. And we want to talk today still about a serious subject, but we ended the last show really on a positive note about the happiest day of his life. And that day came when he was able to forgive and ask for forgiveness from those whom he had harmed after having been a victim of sexual abuse for over 15 years, 20 years at the hands of ex-Cardinal Theodore McCarrick and other, sadly, Catholic priests and bishops. And so that day began the second half of his life. And that's what we want to talk about today, a little bit about, moving forward. But in that, there's a conversation that needs to be had about why does this happen in the first place? Why was he allowed to be a victim of a priest and of another priest and of a bishop? And why did no one in the hierarchy do anything about it? They knew what was going on, but they did nothing about it. So, Mr. James Grein, sorry, I always talk too much at the beginning of the shows. I just want to say thank you again from the bottom of my heart for agreeing to bless my viewers with truth born out of the grace of God that has been planted within you. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
My it's my with great gratitude that I'm actually to sit here and be able to do this, and I thank you, Kristen.
Uh, on our last show, you told me you wanted to talk about why this happens. Why do priests do this to young men? Can you start right there?
There was a I was abused, but I never abused again. And I always thought that if somebody was abusing me, they must have been abused as a child. And I watch a lot of other children come to me and explain to me that their father or their priest abused them, and they were abused before that, and that the evil cycle has continued to happen over and over again. And that's something that goes on for centuries, and it's a merry-go-round of reasons. But why is it that I was able to end that cycle? Why was I able to stop and not physically abuse another human being?
Yeah.
And why was I able to reach beyond that? I have no answer, but it's just God's grace inside of me. He needed me to be a better, stronger man. So I have to go into a situation right now. I've been working with Canon lawyers, and I was working with people who understand canon law. I don't. When my lawyers send me or somebody sends me some legalese stuff, I just say, "Huh?" And somebody explains to me what this means.
Mm-hmm.
So these gentlemen that I work with now send to me in English, in plain English, what is happening and why it's happening inside the Catholic Church, but not only the Catholic Church, within undeveloped countries, within the UN system across the world. This is very serious stuff, very serious and unfortunate programs are in the world that permit such actions by human beings on others
To be perpetuated.
the law. In 1923, after many, many years prior to that, that pedophilia or abuse of another human being, pedophilia or homosexuality, bestiality, or anything like that, was, before 23, was to be found out about another human being, they were going to be sent away. They were going to be imprisoned. They could be even killed. Because you don't need that type of person in society. In 1923, canon law changed the law that it's okay to be a pedophile. It's okay to abuse another human being. It's okay to do other sordid acts because it's their disposition.
Now, they couldn't have said that it was okay to do. Is that in line with the Catholic Catechism teaching that it's not a sin to be homosexual, but it's a sin to practice homosexuality? Is that, do you know how the canon law was written?
Yes. The presence of proven psychic personality disorder in a person diminishes the impunity of the offender. The presumption that any sexual act is a matter of the will have generally given way to evidence to the contrary. This evidence has shown that in situations involving a disorder, the person has seriously diminished ability to control his or her actions, experiences a higher or more intense level of compulsion for sex than one who is not afflicted by this disorder. The fact that this level is of the fact of the higher level of compulsion must be considered ecclesiastical by ecclesiastical superiors as they deal with a pedophile clergy. Because of the reduced ability of self-control, it would seem that this order would diminish imputability for canonical crime.
That's kind of with everybody's, to the 2021 understanding that, you know what, and I'm going to say something that you may completely disagree with, and forgive me because I'm going to say this, you may disagree with me. I have a hard time when they say everything is a disease. Alcoholism is a disease, whereas I understand some people are more inclined towards alcoholism than others. Putting the word disease on it makes it sound as if the person who deals and struggles with alcoholism has 0% control over it, which isn't true, because cancer I have 0% control over. Despite the difficulty of alcoholism, I can potentially make a choice. So you may disagree with me on that, but that's what I hear with that kind of stuff, is that, oh, you know what, you were just born this way, you have no way of changing it, so we're just going to say, yeah, we're going to cut you some slack because it's okay. So go ahead and shoot your arrows at me.
No, so canon law must change on criminal sexual abuse. It has to. It is not, pedophilia is not a disease. Alcoholism is not a disease.
The canon law is basically trying to say that it's something you innately have, and we're forgiving it.
Everything is a disease of today, and so, and we could go back to that. So the idea is that no one can be punished for the commission of an external violation of law or precept unless it is gravely imputable by reason of malice or of culpability. And the more that somebody like Theodore McCarrick abuses another human being, shows that he is suffering from pedophilia and he is not at fault for his thoughts or his actions. That is what canon law is saying. And it is now they're moving canon law into the international law through the UN. And it's going to be spread across. If you look at today's situation in the way that new laws are being written across the world, the strongest and the most unforgiving right now is in Australia.
Where it's most unforgiving, you said?
Yes, or in or in or in uh, so in the United States of America right now, many priests are being removed from their ministry, thrown out. Supich has thrown many out, and many bishops in the area, in Virginia, and in Michigan, and in California, they have removed good priests because they're not following the law of secrecy. This law canon law is of a secret. It was a written secret law in 1923. In 1983, John Paul II kept the same law and tightened down the secrecy of reporting.
Wow.
If a priest was found to be a pedophile, to abusing young children, they would be sent away for psychiatric
Help.
help,
Observation.
observation, and then the psychiatrist at that site would write a sentence that, I think he's been rehabilitated. We can now move him from his parish and put it somewhere else. That is the law. The bishops are only following canonical law, and that's it. So in order for this to be changed, is that when you send a priest to a psychiatrist, the psychiatrist cannot be of the church. So the church people are just writing off, saying he's normal and we could go along. And it doesn't matter how many times he has committed a crime. It does not matter how many times he has committed this crime. The more often that he committed this crime, the more
proof that he's just mentally incapacitated, and which means the more we really can't prosecute him because the poor guy is just so sick. We had no idea just how bad he was. So let's protect him by not reporting his sickness. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And that's twisted.
And that's the merry-go-round we're on. So we scream and yell at the bishops for them not reporting anything. They're not supposed to. They've been told by their bosses, the top man, the canon law, do not report. And if this man has that you transfer to another location has not had anything reported about him for 2 years, you are to destroy any files you have on this man. And this has been since 1923. In 2019, Francis said that he was going to have he was going, if anybody was reported, you had one and done. You were going to be thrown out of the priesthood, but only if you were found guilty by using force in a confession. That's why Theodore McCarrick is gone.
Wait, so I want to make sure I understand this. A pedophile priest does something bad, but the church protects them because he says that they were sick and you're not allowed to report it. But if he does do this only in a confessional where his sins are magnified because you're breaking the seal, only then you can report him?
Yes. You can't report if I, the person who was abused, accuses the priest that he broke confessional and that's where he abused me, and it is found to be credible, then that man is reduced to the lay state immediately. They have no alternative. But if a priest is abusing a child of any age, it does not, and it's just because this child is attractive to that man. He is sick, and he's not at fault. That's just the way he has been wired. That's the way God made him. God does not make junk. God does not even think that way.
God doesn't wire someone for sin.
Why does man think that God forgives when he created all of us? Why do you think God is going to forgive you for hurting another human being? He's not. That's why we have real rules and laws. That's why we have the 10 Commandments.
Well, I'm confused. Hold on. I want to make sure my viewers are hearing the same thing the right way. You said God won't forgive you if you do something wrong. Is that what you just said? Because God forgives everything. What am I missing?
Hang on. I knew that was coming.
Well, then you're smart.
The idea is that God doesn't want you to even think about hurting another human being. But if you go to hurt somebody else, you have to live with your own consequences. And the consequences that I have placed upon the earth is that these 10 Commandments and these laws, you have to follow them. Nobody is going to be able to protect you when you hurt another human being.
But you can still be forgiven if you truly repent.
You can repent, but you cannot hide behind a sickness.
Oh, correct. Okay. All right. Just want to make sure we're in the right place there. Correct. God will forgive everything, but you have to repent of it. And you can't just say, well, I had the disease of this or that. And I teach at a university here. Well, it's been publicized. I teach at Old Dominion University here, and that's the university where that teacher, who can't tell if it's a he or a she, tried to promote pedophilia and called it minor attracted persons. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And they're trying to say that you're just born that way and there's nothing wrong with that. And as long as you don't act on it. And I'm like, then what's child porn? Are you technically not acting on it if you're watching that because you're attracted to them? Why is that a law? So, yeah, it's pretty scary because my PhD is in communication. And it's all about language and how we can twist words to persuade people. For instance, it's a little rabbit trail. The pro-abortion movement was absolutely losing steam, had no power back in the 70s because people were like, well, I'm not for abortion, until they decided to change their language and call themselves pro-choice. Well, you don't want to stop someone from having a choice. It's freedom, right? Well, yeah, I do think people should have freedom. So by changing the language, they slowly infiltrated the public with a way of thinking and twisted their thinking to go, well, I wouldn't have one, but I think you should be able to. That's what you're talking about. If we just twist the way we list the words, let's call it a disease instead of calling. Right. And it's so insidious that eventually we're all looking this way, didn't realize it, and you're bad if you stick with the truth of what it is, which is a sin.
I say to myself, how the heck did that happen? It wasn't that way just 20 years ago. Yeah. Did I miss the bus?
How did you find out about this canon law? Did your lawyer tell you this, or did you do research yourself? Because this is a problem, not just of the sexual abuse within the church hierarchy, but the fact that it is being covered up. How did you find out?
So when the gentlemen, priests who were at the November 16th, Enough is Enough event, I spoke to many of them there. Especially Father Mark White, and I talked to him about what his situation was, and he was speaking out about this law, about abuse, and they removed him. Same thing as Father Paul
James
Kalchek.
Altman, Paul Kalchek. You know? That's right.
So I met Kalchek first, and I didn't really understand what he was talking about. And then this gentleman from Australia gives me a little bit of a jingle on the phone. And he said that he had written a book about called the Potiphar's Wife.
Potiphar's Wife, yeah.
Potiphar's Wife, Vatican's Secret in Child Abuse. It's on Amazon. I read it. It was unbelievable. He is in hiding. He was a priest. They stripped him of his priesthood, tried to throw him in jail, has silenced him on the internet, and is trying to make his life as difficult as possible. He's afraid that in Australia, with the new ways of the laws down there because of the COVID pandemic, I'll talk about that this new rise in laws are going to end his life. And that this new way of life, of everything being a sickness, nothing is going to be illegal.
Correct.
Nothing.
Correct.
There are people there are priests, really, really strong, good priests, especially in Michigan right now, who are losing their ministries. They were older gentlemen to go into the seminary. They didn't go to the seminary when they were, 18, 19 years old, 20 years old. They went in there when they were in their late 20s because they really wanted to be with Christ. They really had an idea of what they wanted to do. But they went into the priesthood, and I went into an AA program. They really believed it. They had been stripped of their ministries. There was one gentleman that he was the only priest in this parish. They threw him out. They excommunicated him, and they sold the parish. So who are you punishing? Are you punishing the priest? No, you're punishing the people who believe in God in that parish. You're taking away God in that parish. And the bishops cannot do anything about it because of canon law. Canon law says this is what we have to do. And this law has been with us since 1923. What I'm afraid of is that in 2019, Francis comes out and says, we are going to go do away with child abuse. And we're going to make sure that no child gets abused inside the Catholic Church for the rest of time. But nothing has happened. Children are still being abused all across the world. Children are still being abused in Africa, in third world countries where they don't have the laws like we have in the United States. The United States is still the last bastion on earth where you cannot abuse somebody. And once we fall, we're done. The world will be lawless. And it's going to be okay for a priest, for any man, or any woman to sleep and have sex with a minor.
Yeah.
I have learned some incredible, stupid stories about men, priests, who are abusing children as young as 5. That makes me sick. So today's lesson for me is that God kept me alive. I need to learn this.
And to teach it.
And to teach it. Because what are they going to do? Are they going to excommunicate me? I think not. Are they going to try to silence me?
Oh, yeah.
Have a hard time. I'll find another way.
And that's what's really good about your victimization, James. See, if you were just me trying to speak out against it, or people who have not been victimized by the church, we wouldn't have as much power and voice as someone like you. So you lived through this horrifying situation only to now become the mouthpiece of the Lord. So, I always tell my mom, I said, my mother who was sexually abused by her father for 10 years, I said, Mom, I am not happy that you were abused, but I am grateful for the woman you became because of it. And my mother is now a foster care provider for psychotic and schizophrenic adults. These are society's throwaways. And she and I know this is because she knew what it was like to not feel loved, to feel like the castaway. And so, what Satan meant for harm, the Lord meant for good. And here you are. They won't silence you because they can't silence you because you were a victim. And so your voice has a power. And the Lord knew that. He knew that. So, again, thank you for speaking up when others which I understand, don't have the strength to do so yet.
They can't. They're afraid. They're hiding behind people. And the bishops can't speak up because they're breaking the canonical law. They're not allowed to. They can lose everything. And it's just shown, from a Father Haley or from a Father Kolchak, from everything. They'll lose everything that they believe in.
Yeah.
and some can and some cannot. And the men that were over there in Baltimore, who were trying to figure out how to write this new law. So in 2018, when this all broke again, they came out and said we needed new policies, a new pieces of paper in order to protect us.
Who said
So
this? The bishops?
the bishop said that, yes.
Okay. So we need to get rid of this old canon law, or we need a new one to protect ourselves.
We needed to be better. So they started to work on that immediately, and that's why 2019 Francis comes out with that. But what really hurt this year was when the report came out of France, about 250,000 boys and girls were abused over the last 50 years. And they brought it to the World Court, and the World Court said and did nothing, saying that the Vatican is its own country and you cannot sue the Vatican.
Mm.
Those 7 judges had the chance to help and change the world, and they kept it for themselves. I think that's where the evil is.
They will have to answer to God for that.
Someday they'll, yes.
Yeah. So,
So,
well, in the position that you're in, you have met a lot of good people. Have you been contacted privately by any good priests or bishops that have, of course, I'm not asking you to name names, but by any of them who have said, look, we're on your side. We want this to be changed. We wish it were different. But we support you, and kind of like, let's offer as much help as we can, but this is all we can do. Have you talked to any good priests or bishops who are saying, we're on team Grien, let's do this?
I've spoken to many great bishops since 2018. The guy down in Tyler, Texas, and I,
Bishop Strickland,
have a regular conversation, and it's good. I mean, and I could call him up and we could just finish the conversation that we had last time. We don't have to say hello. We're doing what we do. We always start with a prayer. We always end with a prayer. And he knows. Yeah. He was getting interviewed in Baltimore, and I just went right over there and hugged him right in the middle of his interview. He talked to me longer than he did to the interviewee. That's okay. Yeah. So there are.
You and I want to make sure we say to everyone watching, there are good, godly priests and bishops out there. So many. But what you're saying is they are silenced. They don't have.
They have to be silenced by the law, by canon law,
which is church law for those who don't know what canon law is.
And what's going to happen? Mm-hmm. And what's going to happen slowly but surely, as you can see, what is happening across the world is that, all right, when I go to court with my civil cases, they are going to they're going to speak from canon law to find guilt with Theodore McCarrick. And they're going to use that, the act of confession as the most viable situation.
Argument, right, that they can use.
So he can be found guilty. And when they go, and that's to be used also in a criminal case. And they always refer to canon law. That's why they're rewriting canon law so that it can cover all of these situations where it is pedophilia. Pedophilia. Because pedophilia is a disease. And it's not a homosexual problem, it's pedophilia.
That's what the bishops are trying to do, you're saying. They're trying to say it's a disease.
They're trying to get the law to be written that way so that it's pedophilia, and that it's not a homosexual problem. But they're having homosexual priests into the program, and it does not matter how many times he abuses the priest abuses another human being. It does not matter, because the more that he does it, the more sick that he is, and the more that we need to send him.
The more sick he is, the more we need to cover up for him, because clearly you can't throw him under the bus.
Because you have to cover up for him because he is a priest. He's been raised to the level of a priest. You and I, are not raised up. We're just ordinary folks.
Right. Who writes canon law, James? The church, right? The church bishops.
So I'm looking for this, the CDF. I'm looking for the people who who have been writing these things, and I get to a point where I get my fingers slapped and say you can't go there.
So the
But
only way
I'm
to get
close.
these laws changed are if we get good priests and bishops in there who are willing to say enough is enough and they change it themselves. Yes?
That's correct.
Is
We
that how
have
we
to
should
hope.
be campaigning? Is to get kind of talk to
Yes,
priests about your soul is at stake. You need to change this so that it can come out, so that someone can speak the truth. And so when that person does speak the truth, they're not laicized or canceled.
correct. So um, we have to wait for Francis to pass on. We have to wait for Benedict to pass on, and we have to hope that the next pope can actually put an end to all of this.
Why do
This
we?
has been,
Yeah, okay, forget it.
this has been with us
For over 100 years.
this law. Before that, we go back to the 1500s, but it's not so much the, but it's not the last 50 years. It's not since Vatican II. It was since
Right.
1923. And children who are listening and adults who are listening to me, go back in your world history and find out what's happening in the world in 1923, and then you will find your answer.
What was it? I mean, World War One had just ended, and we were in the Roaring Twenties. Um, like debauchery had just started really coming out. What else was happening in the 1923 that you think contributed towards this?
The Bolsheviks,
And tell us about that for those of us that are not history buffs.
the rise of
Russia.
communism in Russia,
So
the
when that
rise.
rose, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So it's the infiltration of the Catholic Church that Belladad uh, spoke about, and
Yeah.
that it was the rise of communism and infiltrating the church with homosexuals.
So, for those of you that aren't familiar, Bella Dodd, this is public knowledge. Bella Dodd is a former communist infiltrator. She converted to Catholicism and testified before American Congress, and I think it was 1945 or 46. I could be
Uh,
wrong on the year. It was
54.
1954.
19,
Thank you.
no
She
problem.
testified that the Russians had an absolute plan to destroy America, but they said they could not do so because two things. They were too powerful. They said their family and their faith. So they had an intentional plan to destroy the faith and the family of America by entering through the Catholic Church, because so goes the church, so goes the nation, so goes the world. So when she was infiltrating, what their plan was to get good looking, intelligent, homosexual or pro homosexual men into the priesthood. Because if you're a priest, then eventually some of you will make it to bishop. And if you're bishop, some of you will make it to cardinal. And their hopes were that one would eventually get to the pope. And so that started happening, started infiltrating, changing the ideology, changing the thinking. And based on what you're saying, James, this is what got them to write that canon law about, they're just sick, don't punish them. And then when she converted to Catholicism, she testified to Congress of all that I just said. And she said there were several Soviet infiltrators, many in our country that we weren't even aware of at that time. And she said, but I personally am responsible at this point for having gotten 1,100 men into the priesthood. And she said, I already have 4 in the Vatican. That was in 1954. So what you're talking about, James, is our Vatican is full of, we've got some bad guys. I don't know who they are. Well, we have suspicion who many of them are, not all, but they got in and they have a lot of power. And now it's starting to reveal themselves. And Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano wrote his letter. It is all starting to come to the front, going, this person, this person, this person. He named names and saying, okay, this does exist. This is true. We need to attack it. We need to attack it from within and from without. And so, again, thank you, James, for letting me go there. So the Bolshevik Revolution, now that makes sense to me because I didn't connect that with Bella Dodd.
Okay. So before we lose any of your uh, people in the audience, before you turn me off and say, oh, I don't know what this guy's talking about, stop, pause, think about all the stuff that's happening in your own personal life that has changed since 2008? Tell me whether it's good change or whether it's weird change.
Right.
Why is that happening? Why is it now happening in the last 14 years? What was the catalyst behind all of that change? Why? That's what I had to ask myself before I started to get onto this bandwagon. Because the people who were part of this night of this canonical law stuff started to talk to me 3 years ago, and I blew them off. Now I wish I hadn't, because I have so much to catch up on.
Mm-hmm.
Pray to God. Pray to God about all little Jimmy and little Susie who walks home from school. And why do you have to walk with them every single day? Why
Didn't
can't
have
they
to
go
do
out
that.
and play?
That's right. When I was a little girl, we used to walk, four of us kids. We used to walk a mile to our Catholic school, cross a bridge, cross busy streets. It was
Right?
perfectly fine. But you're right. I wouldn't even dare do that with my children or grandchildren today.
You can't. Why is that? Why are there so many evil people in the world today? Why is that happening? And what can we do? I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, what do you have to do differently today that maybe I don't do? I don't. So I had a visitor come to my house in early November, and he was from California. And he says, "Are you going to lock your front door?" I said, "No, I'm not going to lock my front door. If they want to get me, they're going to come in through the front door anyways. The lock's not going to stop them. So why bother locking it?" "Oh, I could never do that in California." I said, "Well, this is Virginia. This is the way I live." But he started to lock all the doors and lock all the windows, and but you see, that's his way of trying to protect himself. He's locking the outside out.
Yeah.
I don't. Outside of my door is God. Inside my house is a very holy place, and I'm safe here all the time. Outside is God, and we need to go out and start embracing God on a regular basis, not just in church, not just in thinking about praying. How about seeing if there's a kid who might need some help today? Notice the unnoticeable. Notice the kid is not really knowing. It's not really paying attention. Notice that. Okay, that kid needs help. He needs somebody to be his friend.
Yeah.
God gave me an incredible way of life after sobriety and after I learned how to start my own business. And I get to teach kids how to play tennis every day.
Mm.
And I have some great kids who play tennis fantastically well. But I have a lot of kids who aren't sure. Those are the kids I pay attention to, because that's me.
Yeah.
And I got to make sure that that kid is safe. So if I get that kid to laugh, I'm happy. I get that kid just to run around and not worry about a thing, I'm happy. If that kid wants to come back, I will. And I do that with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of children. I do it for the love of myself and the love of Jesus Christ. Because he gave me the opportunity to be a mentor to another human being without abusing, unlike Theodore McCarrick, unlike canonical law. So these bishops, these men of the church, they put on their collar and they put in that little white thing right there, and that gives them license to be a pedophile, because that's their law.
Let me ask you a question. It's a little rabbit trail. Not really. 6 out of 10 people who were abused will abuse. Why didn't you?
I have no answer except for by the grace of God. He had a plan for me. And yes, my sexual orientation takes a beating every single day. There are actions that I do every single day that I'm not proud of. And I'd rather do that than to harm another human being. Because what I do to another human being isn't part of the solution. I was abused, I was changed, I was condemned to death, I was condemned to a life of loneliness, and I fight it every day. There are temptations that I have every single day that I have to work through. Sometimes I'll eat too much instead of abusing another child. I'd rather be fat
Than to hurt somebody else.
than to hurt somebody.
Or to hurt yourself.
It's okay. They've been beating me up for a long, long time. For 63 years, they've been beating me up really, really hard for 52 years. I'm used to it.
You're stronger
I'd
than
rather
you
have
realize.
them kill me than hurt another human being. So I'm going to tell on them. I'm going to tell on them on a regular basis about this canon law. I'm going to tell on them on a regular basis about how you're hurting another child just by giving them something that you're not allowing them to go outside today and play on the street because you're afraid that somebody's going to come by. Why don't you go out there and watch them for a while, let them play. But don't tell them how to play. Just let them play. Let them play. Don't have any rules. Your rules are because you're afraid of what could possibly happen. God is protecting us more than you can protect anybody in the world. And I go out every day and I let the kids play. And I have very few rules. Because if I have those rules for them, I got to follow the same rules. I don't like rules too much anymore because I had rules for so many years. I hate rules. That's why I can't work in another company. I have to work for myself, by myself. I have to. And God has given me a gift.
Yes, he has.
Of being able to hold on to a person's thought process and help them.
So that leads to my next question. I was just going to ask you anyway. Has a little boy or little girl ever come up to you and trusted you and told you that they were being abused? Because you have that sixth sense because of the fact that you are intimately familiar with the signs of abuse. But now you teach tennis. Now you're always protecting those children by not giving them, allowing them to live a childlike life in this world that no longer allows for innocence. Have you ever found that a child's come to you or you've recognized it and said, you know, you might want to talk about it and gotten them help? Or have you not been led there yet?
Unfortunately, I've been led there. Or fortunately, I've been led there.
Fortunately for that child.
For that child. And it happened just recently. It happened over the summer.
Why did that child trust you? Did they know your story or did they sense that you were a good man?
I think that the older children in the class had heard my story. And they were my associates who were on the court with me. And that girl said, well, he always talks to me over there when we talk about other than tennis, stuff other than tennis. And we talk about what their toys are like and what their color of their bedroom or what the heck's going on, what's really happening in life. And I notice when somebody is not really participating is really good. And when they stop participating, what's going on in their life. And this girl came over and they just poured it out to me.
Stay closer to your mic.
So God gave me this opportunity to have this face that kids see, well, he's funny. He's easy to talk to. I can talk to him better than I can do anything. I've had parents come over and ask me, can you tell my kid to clean up this room?
That's your job.
That's your job. But I have this trusting face that God has given me. And I must leave it alone. And I must not criticize myself as much as I do.
Absolutely, you should not. That's what the devil did to make you hate yourself. Have you been able to get help for that child, or have you been the help?
I was the help, and the child's parents are being watched. It's called evidence. It's known in the community. And many people know. Many people, not the kids who know. It's the kids' parents who know. So if the kids' parents have that child over their house or they're playing with them, they can watch. It's a community. I tried to talk to the local enforcement, and they said, well, we can't just walk up to the house and knock on the door and say, hey, listen, this is happening. That would ruin the opportunity for future situations where we could possibly do something. But if it continues, I guarantee you they will be caught. There's too many eyes on them right now. So, laws of today, you can't do anything about it. There's a person who I was suspecting maybe 15 years ago. And I just walked right out to him and I said, are you being somebody bullying you? What's going on? And that person said, yeah, this person was bullying me. And we stopped the situation. But when it's a parent and it's in the family, it's harder to take care of. It's just if it's a bullying situation, you can head on straight into it. Because I am the community leader, and this is not going to happen in my community. Period. But if you have that situation where there's so much abuse that and it's going to happen more and more often, especially in public school, and I'm surrounded by kids in public school, and I watch them every single day. I put these kids through these funny questions, but they're all very serious. They just take it as different. And
like what? What are some of those questions you ask the kids?
How many beers did you have last night? How many beers did you have last night? Oh, did you stay out past your curfew? So when you guys go out on these dates, these group dates, how many people go, and where do you go, and what do you do? Just to see what their behaviors are. And see how many, see if there's like one girl and 10 guys. I don't like this. I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I just want to listen. I want to learn from them. I want to learn from them more than I could tell them. I want to learn from them what's going on. What's the norm today, boys and girls? I don't know what the norm is. So in the 20 years that I've been teaching tennis, I've asked lots of kids how many beers did you have last night? There's only been one kid who says it's none of my business. So I know that I can strike a chord when I need to. And the idea is that I am in a position right now, through the grace of God, to help one person who's great. I can help you. I can help Susie, I can help Stevie, I can help somebody. But the number one person I am helping is me.
Yeah.
Because I am telling me that I have survived. I've come out the other end, and I am powerful, and I'm not going away.
Yeah.
And I have a mission that God has given me, and I have to live this mission. I have to live it as strong as possible. If I walk down the street and somebody knocks me off, then that person will have to live with that consequence.
Yeah.
But the people who know me and who have my voice, and have heard my voice, can continue. And it's just now that I'm really starting to get along with these gentlemen across the world about canon law.
So that was my next kind of direction I wanted to take this, James, is that what do we do? You know, you said now you can help. And I'm like, okay, yeah, so I've never been abused, praise God. But I still want to help. Now I know that the canon law is awful. So what are you learning can our viewers do? You know, sometimes we sign this electronic petition, but it's like, does that really work? You know, writing letters with your actual handwriting and signature, that works. But what do you do? Who do we go to? What have your lawyers told you that is going to be the most effective? Give us some marching orders.
We have to put this out on social media. We have to put this in. This is the law, and we have to tell as many people as possible. Word of mouth will work fastest. Word of mouth will work fastest for all of us. Tell somebody. Tell somebody tomorrow. Tell somebody. When I told my brothers and sisters this a couple of weeks ago, they went, "What?" And I showed it to them in law. Oh, what?
How do
That's
we
not right.
find that? How do we find that? Canon law number what, and how do we find it?
It's number the biggest one, the most tragic one is 1321.
This is not in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, right? Or is
Oh
it?
no. This is a secret. This is a pontifical secret. They don't want
Oh,
anybody to know. They don't. They made sure that nobody knows whatsoever, and it's systematic across the world that you cannot speak about it in the Catholic Church, and so that, as my friends say, Canon law number 1321-1. No one is punished unless the external violation of a law or precept committed by the person is gravely imputable by reason of malice or negligence. They're allowed to, that gives them a license to do anything they want to and hide behind the collar.
yeah.
Nobody can do it.
What can we
And that
do? What can we do though? Can we what do you want us to
I
do?
will I will send you a website of where we can start to speak about this more loudly and more comfortably. I'll talk to my friends in Australia, my friends in Poland, and my friends in the United States, and we'll come up with a local spot, a jumping off point for us.
Okay.
This is the man in Australia has been excommunicated.
For
The
speaking
man
truth.
the man in Detroit has been thrown out of the church. There are people dying because of this. We speak about it. So I will come up with the next solution, and so we can do it. But the main thing is to do is that the reason why they are pedophiles, the reason why they are abusing children is because they can, and nobody
It's gonna stop.
will ever catch them because it's a law that protects them from ever being caught. And if they are caught, they go see a psychiatrist. And then a priest or the bishop will sign off that he went to psychiatry and now he's okay, and send him to another place and then destroy the files.
Yeah.
There are 3 gentlemen right now who are fighting hard as they possibly can against the Archdiocese of Lansing. And Lansing is hiding everything. All the stuff that they hid in Buffalo when that blew up about 3 years ago. And I flown to Buffalo and tried to help them with stuff. They were destroying files. That's when that lady that was on 60 Minutes
Hmm.
saying that they're destroying files because that's what they're told to do according to law.
Well, one of the things that I was thinking is going to be very helpful. A lot of men don't want to join the priesthood because all the good guys are getting kicked out. But, from what I've heard, the young people are waking up. We might be small, might be a remnant, but I think one of the solutions is if you're watching this and you have a good and godly son who is interested in the priesthood, I would say encourage him, teach him these things. And you know what? If the bad guys during the Bolshevik Revolution could go in and infiltrate the church with bad guys, let's just infiltrate the church with the men who God intended there in the first place. Let's get these good godly men in who, because these young 20-year-old priests will become bishops and then they will become cardinals. And we can go the long route that way and it will change. But one of the other things too, James, that I think people forget? God is God. And God only needs one to fight against an army of 10,000. Look at David and Goliath. They forget that God, and I think God is saying enough is enough. The time of mercy is past, time of justice has come. And I think he is, just the fact that all this is being dug up and be revealed in the swamp. And I think
Now,
God is going to be doing something
if
even
I'm
sooner than
finding
that.
out, if I'm finding out about this,
If I'm finding out about this,
then everybody should find out about this.
yeah.
There were 7 men, 7 young men. They looked like they were like 14 years old, who walked up to me in Baltimore and said, Mr. Grien, we're so happy that you're up there, but I want to let you know that I'm going to become a priest. And we're all going to become priests. And we're all
Yes.
going to go in there and we're going to save your church. And it was just amazing. He said, they're all old. Sorry, sir. They're old, like me. I said, like me? I go, yeah. And they said, and they're all going to die soon and they're going to go away. And we're going to take over.
Yes.
And we're going to return the world to a law and order situation where
Oh my gosh, it just gives me goosebumps.
most of the rules and most of the laws across the earth have always come from the church. That's why they wanted to kill the family.
So goes the church, so goes the world. That's right.
And they did a good job of killing the family. They did a really good job of killing the family. The family is being beaten
Bludgeoned.
every day, bludgeoned. And so that's why today, go home and hug your children. That's what I said in Baltimore. Mom and dads, go home and hug your children. Don't think about what they may have done or may not have done or didn't do their homework. So like, just tell them you love them, because they need to hear that from you. They watch you walk around and not so happy sometimes, but you just got to talk to them and say, son, I love you so much. It's unbelievable what you do for me. I didn't get enough of that. So I need you to give that too much to your son and daughters.
You know what the Lord just downloaded into my brain? This is for you. Remember the story of Lazarus in the Bible? Not the one that was raised from the dead.
Yes.
The one who sat at the gates of the city, and even the dogs would lick the sores on his body, and all he would do was beg, and he lived a miserable life. And when he died, and when the rich man died, who was where? Lazarus was up in heaven. The rich man who had had everything, very little pain, very little suffering, he was down in Hades. And he asked Lazarus to go spend a message. But here's my point. This is what the Lord told me to pass on to you. You are Lazarus. You live a life of pain. You've been tortured. You've been ridiculed. You've been isolated, forgotten, unloved. And he says this, James, your lifetime is this big. This big. Your eternity is this big. And if you can make it through this much of a life of suffering and loneliness, you get this.
Amen.
He wanted me to remind you that you've got some great stuff coming ahead of you. Just keep moving forward.
Amen. I will. That I will.
I know you will. Well, I know last week when we uploaded our show, I asked you to name one thing you'd have our listeners do differently. We've told them today about we need to be proactive. We need to change canon law. We need to protect our children, love them, go home to them. And you may have already answered this question, but I got in my shows the same way. Name one thing you'd have our listeners do differently as a result of something they heard today.
I would ask them to take a walk more often with their children rather than putting them in the car and going for a ride. Go outside and ride a bicycle with your kid. And if it's too cold to ride the bicycle outside, go someplace where you can play with them. Go to a gym and play with them. That's all they want. They want your time. They don't want a present. They don't want you to just watch it. They want your time to watch to hang out with it. They want to hang out with you. They want to be with you. They don't want to just sit there and watch TV with you. Don't do an activity. If you're gonna have a child, see if you can find one next door. I live in a community where I don't have any children. I'm not married. I don't have any children. There are a lot of kids in the neighborhood. So I went out and bought them a badminton net.
I love that.
Badminton in the street because I wanted to watch them play. parents around me that thought I was crazy. Why would you want to spend money like that? I didn't really spend money. I just wanted to see kids have a good time. And I wanted to, because I want to be that kid someday. I want to go out there and do it with them. Do something different. For a child. An activity. What I do is not greatness. I just do it out of love. Wishing that I had something to play with when I had that.
But now you got a lot of
Now you
got a lot of nieces and nephews as well.
True.
Yeah, and I heard that you have a fantastic family who is just so supportive of you and they love you.
Yes.
So you may not have your own offspring, but I think the Lord's got you busy enough with helping out everybody else's.
Absolutely. I have so many kids every single day on a tennis court, which is just phenomenal.
Good for you.
And kids who don't even know me come over and talk to me because they see other kids doing it. And so that they know it's a safe place. And I've told all the parents, and I told the community where I work, I said, all I'm doing is building a safe place for your child to come and not have to worry about anything. And I'm going to protect them with all of my might.
Yeah. Well, God bless you. God bless you for your work. And each and every one of you, if you can say a prayer for the work James Grien is doing, pray for the church. Pray for those kids who are being abused and have no one to talk to. And do as he says and hug those kids of yours. I'm going to do the best I can with my grandchildren. They're at that age where like, Grandma. I'm like,
Yeah, well,
one day you'll let me touch you again. So to each and every one of you, please go to my website, breakfastwithbacon.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter. I only send it out about once a month. Sometimes we're trying to get to every 2 weeks. It will send you information standing for your marriage, which guests that the Lord has brought to my radio show. We're trying to change the world. We're trying to, I personally have a mission to save 1 million marriages and, win 1 million souls. And guests like James Grien and Stephen Brady and Milo, I can't even say his last name, Yiannopoulos. Yeah, and so many others that the Lord has brought onto my show are helping to do the same. So like all of my social media, and if you have a question for James, just post them in the comments. He will respond to them, and he will reach out if it's something that he gets a lot of mail. I'm just trying to be straight up. He gets a lot of mail, and if it's something that you are genuine about, he will be in touch with you. So James, thank you for being a guest on my show again. I'd love to have you again in the future. If you ever have anything that you think needs to get out there, please contact me. Let's give it airtime.
I shall. Thank you very much, Christine. You've really been very beneficial for me.
Oh,
Really a lot for me.
awesome. Well, let's take this off the air. For each and every one of you, I thank you. I'm humbled that you spend some time watching Breakfast with Bacon. But I'm Dr. Christine Bacon. You've been watching Breakfast with Bacon. And I'd like to remind you always to live your life
Sunny side up.
side up.